Hello Pirates, it's Gavin from the One Piece card game, and now that we have finished with all of the finals across the world, from Japan to America to Europe, I have collected data from all of the finals throughout all of the regions to decipher what's actually going to be at Worlds. So let's take a refreshing look at set 9. What decks are we going to see? What decks might be a surprise? So to start off, I have gathered data from a bunch of different finals across the different regions, including Japan, Oceania, Latin America, and Asia. And there's a lot of interesting information. First off, Doflamingo, of course, it's been very, very popular across bunches of different regions, but you might be surprised to find out that it actually wasn't the most played deck at every championship. Shanks actually beat out Doflamingo in Aichi in Japan, which was the last tournament Japan had in OP-09, as well as in Thailand. So even though when OP-09 went over to overseas, Shanks has definitely seen a little bit of a drop off, it's actually been more successful and more played than a lot of people might expect. Another big one is Teach. I know Teach was huge in Japan and Thailand and other Asia regions and hasn't found as much success, but actually it has found a lot of success. If you look at the play rate, Teach is very, very low. At the USA Finals, Teach only had 17 players, having a measly 3% play rate in the entire field. But if you actually look at the decks that made it into the top 32, the decks that are actually getting to top cut, Teach was by far the most successful deck in OP-09 across all regions. In the USA Finals, 125 people played Doflamingo. So you would think that Teach would actually have a really, really hard time getting into the finals and actually having success. 3 people make it into the finals and boasted an 18% rate of getting people to the finals. So even though it hasn't seen a lot of success as far as when you look at like the top 32, there's only 2 or 3 Teaches. It's not because the deck hasn't been successful, it's because the deck hasn't been played. So there might actually be a noticeable increase of Teaches in the World Finals compared to, say, your normal regional, especially when you have a meta where people are looking primarily at what looks to be Dofi and Black-Yellow Luffy. Speaking of Black-Yellow Luffy, it definitely seems to be like the deck to beat, even though Dofi has seen more popularity overall. Black-Yellow Luffy has seen a lot of success in Asia, in Japan, as well as America. And it's definitely seen consistent success, and a lot of top players are winning with it. It's definitely one of the most winningest decks next to Doflamingo, so I think we'll see a lot of it. So going into deck specifics, let's first take a look at Doflamingo. There are a lot of different tech cards that people have played, whether or not you play 1 or 2 perfumes, how many gravity blades you play, how many zero cost events you play. A lot of people are playing 1 or 2 as like a tech card. But the big key part of which you play or not seems to be Jozu. Jozu has seen a lot of play, it's seen very little play in some regions. In Japan, it was almost always exclusively played as a 4-of, but the most successful Doflamingo player played 0. Jonas, who brought the deck to top 3 in the latest American Finals, played 0 Joels in his list when he was playing in America, even though he ended up changing that list in later tournaments. So it definitely seems to be a point of contention in a lot of players, and it really comes down to whether or not they think it's useful in the mirror, and whether or not they think they have to tech harder for those other matchups like Teach and like Black-Yellow Luffy. And speaking of Black-Yellow Luffy, I definitely think it's going to be the second most popular deck at the World Finals. While Black-Yellow Luffy has kind of seemed to be a little bit figured out as far as the list is concerned, most people are using their tech slots on cards like Kuzan, Shirahoshi maybe to tech for Lucci's. If you're expecting that, it can also be a little bit useful for the Teach matchup. There have been some interesting tech cards, especially at Oceania, where one Black-Yellow player was able to get top 3 with interesting cards such as I Have My Crew, the 1-cost event that increases one of your character's cost while also drawing a card. And he actually reduced the event, the 3-brother spawn, so the normal search event. And it actually seems like a kind of an interesting tech, especially playing it with Tempest Kick. So you're going to be able to cycle your deck faster to be able to draw your 8-cost Morias. One of those cards that doesn't have a search effect, but can be extremely key, not only in the mirror, but in that Doflamingo matchup. And being able to draw it more consistently, even if you have a little bit less consistency in drawing your babies and your adults of Luffy and Sabo, it did seem like a very interesting tech, and it saw a lot of success. So we might be seeing some of those tech cards in the finals. And the last big contender, I would say, for the World Finals has to be Teach. While Teach did not see a lot of success as far as players in the United States and the rest of the foreign scene, in Japan especially, Teach was by far the most winning deck as far as play rate to actually winning tournaments and actually getting into top 32. While the deck is almost completely figured out, with there being a little difference on whether or not you play Jack in favor of more consistency with your deck list. If players from the Western regions, if players from Europe, if players from America don't prepare versus good Teaches, they might just get blown out in the finals from those Japanese Teaches and from those Thai Asian Teaches that will be waiting to come and play. As far as the other decks that have definitely seemed to be in the format, but I don't think will see as much success at Worlds, we have Purple Luffy. Purple Luffy has had a very high and very consistent win rate, and it has a bunch of top 8s, but it has very, very little success in actually winning a tournament. It won once in Japan at one of the smaller tournaments, but it has had almost no success getting into top 8s after that, and it is one of the most losing decks after Shanks as far as play rate to getting those top cuts. Shanks, even though it has boasted a play rate of incredible amounts in Japan and Thailand, it was beating Doflamingo. Even in Oceania and Latin America, the play rate is almost similar. While Doflamingo has hovered around 16 to 17% very consistently, Shanks has also been even at its lowest around 13 to 14%, excluding America, which was an invitational, which makes it a little bit different. It definitely has not shown many results, and it definitely seems like strong players are avoiding Shanks as a deck, even though some players have played it to some success. In Asia, I'm not sure we're going to be able to see a lot of Shanks, maybe 1 or 2 overall. Lucci is another deck that has definitely seen a lot of popularity, especially in the West, but just because of the sheer amount of Black and Yellow and Teach that we can expect at the World Finals, I'm not sure how many players are going to be comfortable bringing Lucci. I know I've talked to a couple of players who, even though they played Lucci to get their spot, or like win their regional in Japan, for example, to get to the finals, they think that Lucci is more of a top 32 deck, like get you to the finals and not a play in the finals kind of deck. And then lastly is NL. NL has a fairly decent matchup versus Black Yellow Luffy and a very strong matchup versus Dofi. So if players aren't expecting Teach based on current play rates and they don't expect it to be one of those decks that people actually end up bringing to the World Finals, it might be an interesting tech choice. And finally, I just want to go over a couple of decks that I've heard a little bit of rumors about of maybe actually being able to be a little bit of a dark horse or surprise pick in the finals. First is Boa Hancock. The play rate, even though it is absolutely atrocious, it has seen a lot of success. It went to top 4 in Oceania. It's snuck in a couple of top 32s, top 64s overall. In Japan, it was also almost consistently you'd have 1 or 2 at that 7-2 line, not quite getting there. And it definitely seems like a deck that has a very strong Teach matchup, a very strong Black-Yellow matchup, and a passable Dofi matchup. So if you're looking at the top 3 expected decks, it might be one of those tech choices if you're feeling a little bit more like you need to be meta in the scene, it could be a strong choice. Another one is Reiju. Reiju was second at the first America Finals, and there's not a lot of reasons why you couldn't play the deck right now. It does very, very well into Teach. It can definitely beat Black-Yellow with puddings. If you get a good time pudding, you can definitely swing that matchup in your favor. And versus Dofi, while it's not extremely favored, you can definitely, especially with Niji, play that tempo game, get those characters back into their hand, and win that game. So because there was that one player that made it into the finals, made it into the World Championships with Reiju, I wouldn't be surprised if he decided to bring that deck again. And one deck that is very dear to my heart is actually Aggro Vegapunk. While it hasn't seen much success, a lot of it is because of the play rate, and it's actually seen spurts of brilliance, especially in 8.509. The biggest addition in 09 as far as the meta, I would say, would be Teach, and it has a very, very winning matchup versus Teach. It has a very, very winning matchup versus Doflamingo, and it can definitely beat Black-Yellow. If you hit it against almost any other deck, you're gonna have a bad time. If you're looking at those three, I definitely think it has a good chance to maybe get into Top Cut and maybe even bring it all the way home. I can't wait for the World Finals. I'm gonna be there casting, and I just can't wait to figure out who's gonna win. Is it gonna be Dofi? Is it gonna be Black-Yellow Luffy? And who's going to win? Like, what person? There's only one repeater in the entire world. Clyde, the winner of the first American Finals, is going back to try to take revenge. Can he take revenge, go from third, and get that first place spot in Worlds as well? Can some new player that we've never seen before come out of nowhere to take the entire tournament with maybe even a deck we've never seen before? I think that Set 9 has a lot of potential for exploration, especially in these smaller formats. So I can't wait to see what's going to win, and hopefully I'll see you there.